Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming to today's Play Attention webinar. My name is Gwen Sorley, and I will be your host today. I really appreciate all of you coming to our presentation today, taking a little break from everything you have going on today to talk about how to find happiness in your ADHD world. Now, a couple of things I want to mention before we get started. One is that we are recording this event. So at the end of the webinar, you will receive a recording if you're a registered attendee. So you'll have an email that will have the replay link, so you'll be able to watch certain areas again or share it with any family members or staff members who are unable to attend. Also, remember there is a chat box. So if you bring your mouse down to the bottom of the screen, you'll see there is a chat box. And if you have any questions or comments, do please feel free to type your questions or comments in there. That way it'll be a little bit more interactive and I can share your questions and address them as we go through, or just your comments as we go through. Now we're going to be talking about finding happiness in your ADHD world, but this really does apply not only to individuals with ADHD, but everyone. If we look at all of these individuals on the screen, they all look different, right? They all are different ages, different genders, but they all have something in common. And that is, they all want to be happy. And we hear that so much. You may even say it sometimes, I just want to be happy, right? But the question is, we all want to be happy, but what makes us happy? Probably when you were younger, you thought, I just want to be really rich and really famous. That will make me happy. But as we age, we start to learn that maybe that isn't the key to happiness. So what is the key to happiness? The longest study ever done on happiness is the Harvard study of adult development. Now, they have been studying individuals for over 80 years, the same individuals for over 80 years. They started back in the 1930s. During the Great Depression. They had a handful of individuals, and they were young boys at that time, and they started tracking these boys as they became teenagers and young adults, and then middle-aged adults, all the way into their 70s, their 80s. And if you look at the fact on the screen, now approximately 60 men are in their 90s, and they're still in this study. So it really is an amazing study. And they interviewed these boys through their lifetime, and they always asked them questions about, their socioeconomic status, their relationships, their education, their jobs, everything that was going on in their life. And they tracked this. And I was going to say at the end of the study, but it's still going on. But what they found was that the key to happiness was close relationships, and that close relationships were more important than money or fame when it came to happiness. When they interviewed individuals at 50 years old, the individuals who reported they had close connections and good, solid relationships, those individuals were the happiest when they were in their 80s. So those early relationships, that ability to have close connections, is really the key to our happiness. So if that is the important part, we know that the key to health and happiness are meaningful relationships. And yet we in America have an epidemic of loneliness. 1 in 5 Americans report that they are lonely. And sometimes that can be confusing, because if you go online and you look at everyone's Facebook page, it reports that they have 300, 400 friends. So how could we all be so lonely? The fact is, it's not just friends, relationships, connections. It's not the amount, not the quantity, right? But the quality of those connections. They asked individuals 25 years ago how many close friends they had. If things started to fall apart in their lives and they really needed to reach out to someone and talk to someone about what was going on in their life, and they needed support and guidance and help, how many friends do you have that you could rely on? 25 years ago, the average that people would say was that they had three. They had three close friends that they knew they could really count on, they could really talk to when they needed a friend. And now, 25 years later, although our social media shows we have all these connections and all these friends, the average answer is one. We have one close connection. And we do have this epidemic of loneliness. And this is a problem because loneliness and happiness, these aren't just emotions. These affect both our body and our mind. It truly does affect our health overall. People who have strong relationships have longer lives. They have good physical fitness, lower blood pressure, stronger immune systems, less cognitive decline as they age, better heart health, and overall more happiness. Now, this is as opposed to those who report loneliness. They experience higher blood pressure, higher risks of heart attack, higher rates of obesity, a weakened immune system, cognitive decline. They actually report that those individuals who say they are lonely or are experiencing loneliness are twice as likely to have dementia in their later years. They also experience anxiety and depression. There was one study that I read about where they looked at two groups of individuals, and they all had similar levels of arthritis. And these were individuals late in their years. So they looked at these individuals, and those people who had strong relationships and arthritis reported less pain than those individuals who had arthritis and were experiencing loneliness. So loneliness and happiness, not just emotions, but they actually affect our brain health and our body health. So if we know that the key to happiness is to develop these strong relationships, how do we do that? Because sometimes it seems difficult. It seems difficult to make friends, or it seems difficult to have really close, good, solid connections. And it can be especially difficult if you're experiencing ADHD. The characteristics of ADHD can sometimes really make relationships challenging. And we see this because sometimes simply because you're not paying attention to certain situations, you may not consider the feelings of others. Or perhaps you interrupt conversations, right? Because one of the areas that we struggle with when we have ADHD is that impulse control. So you might notice that you are constantly interrupting people while they're trying to have a conversation. And although you don't mean to interrupt, it does appear sometimes to be rude, like you don't care about that person, which may be very far from the fact. It's just impulse control. Also, you may be considered unreliable. If you have ADHD, it may be very difficult for you to keep up with time management, right? Time management is a struggle. And so you may be running late oftentimes. You may miss deadlines. You may make a date with a friend and then you completely forget about it. Again, it's not coming from a bad spot. These are just areas you happen to struggle with. But because this is a difficult area, it makes friendships difficult. Emotional control is often a hard area as well. So it may seem that you overreact in certain situations. Missing out on social cues. So you miss the look, you miss the shake of the head. And then you, or maybe your child who's struggling with ADHD, tends to miss the look, miss the shake of the head. So he ends up responding inappropriately or impulsively, just simply because they're not paying attention to the social cues. You may not make friendship a priority. There's so many other things that are in your mind that you're trying to keep up with that friendships just aren't a priority. And also, you may have a difficult time listening. So these are certain areas that we really want to improve in order to improve those connections, improve those friendships. And we can develop these skills. It does take time, and it does take some practice at doing these things. We can practice it in order to improve, but there has to be an awareness, right? An awareness of what we're doing and time to reflect. So I want to give you some strategies, some steps we can take in order to improve these relationships. And again, this is not just for individuals with ADHD. We can all benefit from practicing and really being much more aware of how we're interacting with individuals. Now, there are many different ways that we could improve, and this webinar could go on for 3 hours discussing all of those areas, and then you'll all leave just being overwhelmed and not knowing where to start. So I just want to give everyone one thing to think about, one step in the right direction. And we're going to talk about a simple phrase that you can say to your friend or your spouse that will start strengthening those connections. Because remember, the connections we're talking about are not just friends. It also relates to how you're interacting with your spouse and other relatives, your child. So it's strengthening all your relationships overall. So there's one simple phrase I want you to remember and start using in your interactions with individuals. And that is, tell me more. When they looked at a group of patients, they were in the hospital with diabetes. So they were severe diabetics and they were in the hospital because of that. And if there's a lonely spot, it can often be the hospital. Hospitals can be a very lonely spot. And when they had the doctors go in and interact with these patients, some of the doctors said this phrase, tell me more. They worked this phrase into the conversation, and they found that when the doctor said, tell me more, the patients actually reported that they felt a better connection with that doctor, that they felt a better relationship with that individual. So that's one step that you can take. Look at your friend or your spouse when they're having a conversation with you and say, tell me more. That is the first step to improving that relationship and strengthening that bond. And then they found what even strengthened it more was to follow up with, and what happened next? So there are two phrases, if you can jot them down or you can remember them, that these are the phrases you want to start using in your relationships. Tell me more, and what happened next? And these will start your path to strengthening that relationship. But it's not enough to just look at your friend or your spouse and say, tell me more, right? You have a very important role to play next. If you say, tell me more, then your role is to then truly listen to the response. If you look at me and you say, tell me more, and I start telling you more, and then you just simply interrupt me, or perhaps you say, tell me more. So I go into my story and I start talking to you, and 5 minutes later, you realize I have no idea what she's saying because your mind is off in the Bahamas somewhere. It's important that you follow up that question by truly listening. And this is a difficult part for all of us. They say that 60% or more than 60% of our communication is listening, but we only remember 25% of what was said. So it's important we truly listen. And this is a funny story that happened in one of my friendships. My closest friend is Kate, and we have been friends since we were in college. We actually met as freshmen in college, so when we were 18 years. So we've been friends for well over 30 years now. And She does have ADHD, and just recently, a few years ago, she really started to reflect on certain areas in her life, and she was really trying to improve certain areas. And she called me one day and she said, "Gwen, you realize that you're my only friend? You are my only friend that I've had for so long, but I don't know why you're my friend." And I said, "What do you mean, why I'm your friend?" And she said, "I just realized that I've known you for almost 30 years now. I know you have 3 sisters, but I have no idea what their names are." So that was an example of us being close, but she never truly listened. And now that she's reflected on that and she really understands what she does during a conversation, that has changed completely. Now she truly does listen. She gives me time to talk. It took me a little while to get adjusted to that because I wasn't used to her actually listening and asking me questions. So it was really interesting. So it is important to ask those questions, but then be prepared to truly listen, which listening is actually an art in itself, isn't it? As Kate really did show us, it is a skill. And it is a skill that we can certainly all begin to practice, and we can all really get better at listening. But if we're going to improve something, if we're going to improve an area in our life, we have to know what the purpose is. And if I asked you right now, if I asked you, what is the purpose of listening? I would get all kinds of different responses. You could even type them in right now. If I asked you the purpose of listening, what would you say? And many of you would say, well, it's to get information. That's usually our first thought, right? I'm going to listen because I need information and I need to get that information. The only way I'm going to get it is if I listen. But if that is your only intent, if your only intent is to get information, then as soon as you get that information, you're going to interrupt that other person, thereby making that person feel less significant, what they're saying not as important. So as many of you are saying right now, and you have a good understanding, you're saying that you listen to learn about what that person is saying. Kristen said to understand. Devon says to hear what is not being said. Very good. Excellent. To hear what is not being said. Alina says being well informed and to have meaningful relationships. So you all know that the purpose of listening is much more than just getting the information you need. It's not about you. It's about the other person. And I think it was Chris who said, let's see. Sandy says it also lets people vent. Absolutely. So it helps us develop a connection. It puts the spotlight on the other person. Remember, it's not about you. It helps us understand that other person. Like Kristen said, that's the one I was looking for earlier. It helps us understand that person. And really, relationships are a two-way street, right? That person needs you and you need that person. So when you listen and you listen for understanding, it makes it more likely that that person will listen to you when you have something important to say, when you want to talk. So it opens the door to lasting human relationships. So that's our purpose. A lot of important reasons that we should be listening more. So let's have an action plan. How can we start being better listeners? Because look at what we're discussing today. Our goal is happiness. We know that in order to be happy, we have to have strong relationships. The fact that we have strong relationships and good quality connections will lead to happiness. But in order to have those good connections, we have to be a good listener. We have to develop and foster that relationship. So here's an action plan on some steps you can take in order to be a better listener. First of all, focus, right? Do not multitask during conversations. I don't know how many times I've been told I'm a great multitasker. You are not a great multitasker. No one is a good multitasker. Our brain is designed to do one thing really well at a time, one thing. So you're not a good multitasker. So it is important that when you're having a conversation, don't multitask, focus. A step you can take is turn off your phone. Just turn the ringer off and then lay the phone face down on your desk and then allow that individual to start talking. Okay, that's one step. How many conversations have you had with someone and the conversation you're talking away and the other person is like this? Constantly looking at the phone. You know that what you're saying is only being partially heard at that moment. We're all guilty of it. So turn the ringer off, put it face down. If you're in front of your computer, shut the computer monitor off or walk into another room where you don't have a lot of electronics around you. Move books and papers away from your reach so you're not tempted to start doodling or looking at something else. Turn the TV off. By doing this, you're showing the other person that they are important. Just think about it. Just think about that first step. If you walked into the room and you started a conversation and your spouse turned off the phone and turned it over on the desk and looked at you to listen, how would that make you feel? I know if my husband did it, my first thought would probably be, what's wrong, right? My second thought would be, I'm in trouble. Then after getting past those two, I would be really happy. I would think, wow, he's really interested in what I'm saying. And he's really putting the spotlight on me. And now Kristen says, my daughter hears better and focuses better while doodling, she says. If that's true, and if you've seen that that's true, and I did a consultation the other day, Kristen, where I had an adult who felt the same way. And so she started the conversation by saying, I have a pad in front of me and I have a pencil. I'm going to be listening to you, but I do listen better if I doodle. So make certain you understand that I'm not being rude, I'm not checking out, but this really does help me stay focused. So I think, Kristen, that could be, if you find that does help your daughter, that she learns how to communicate that, because it made a big difference in my communication with that individual, where she could say, I'm still connected, but this is a strategy I have to use, okay? Many of us can't do that. Most of us can't do that, honestly. But if it's the right thing for your daughter, then I would just talk to her about making certain the other person knows why she's doing that, okay? Good point. The next step is to acknowledge. So our first step is focus, and the next step is to acknowledge, to make certain that the individual knows you are listening. It can be small assurances that you're listening, just a simple, yes, I understand. Just little things, no opinions, just little bits of acknowledgement. It can just be a nod of the head, right? If I were doing this presentation and I could actually see all of you, I would be continually scanning the audience in order to get that feedback that you were listening, that you were engaged by those little assurances. So make certain that you're providing those. And then summarize what was just said. So you're not interrupting, you're not giving your own experience at this point, you're just summarizing what that person said. And this really helps in two different ways. It helps and assures the speaker that you are listening, but then also remember, if you have an attention difficulty, it can just do a self-check to make certain that what that person has said and what you're hearing or what you remember is the same. right? If it's not the same, then your friend will correct you. But they'll appreciate the fact that you wanted to summarize everything and make certain there was a clear understanding. So summarizing is really a clear way of acknowledging and just clarifying in your own mind that you are focused and you are staying on track with this conversation. Next, to be a better listener. So first focus, then acknowledge, and then make certain you're picking up on those social cues. Who was it that said, I think it was Duvon, who said, the purpose of listening was to hear what is not being said. So Duvon, what you were talking about were those social cues. And sometimes those are so easy to miss and yet so important. Social cues are a critically important aspect of communication. So they're not just facial features. It's not just the look or the shake of the head, but it's the face, the gestures, the body, the voice, the inflection of the voice, and motion. So you want to start picking up on all of those social cues while you're having the conversation. Information is often given or reinforced through cues rather than words. And it is so true. Oftentimes it's much easier to have a conversation when you are in front of some person and you can see all those social cues and put it all together rather than just on a phone call. Picking up on social cues allows you to know when to speak, when to actually change your behaviors, when to end the conversation, when to change the topic. So you're constantly adjusting what you're saying and what you're doing in response to those social cues. Then lastly, empathize, don't minimize. This is really something we all have to be much more aware of, that we empathize. Don't minimize. Remember, the focus is on the speaker. It's not about you. And that means when your friend or your spouse or your sister is talking to you about an experience that they have just had, you truly listen. You listen and hear what they're saying. You don't say, well, if you think that is bad, listen to what happened to me, right? Because then you're minimizing what they are saying and you're putting the spotlight back on you. So make certain that you really try not to say, if you think that was bad, and we all do this, listen to what happened to me. Just really listen to what they're saying and make certain that you're listening to what they're saying, not thinking about what you're going to say next. Allow your friend to express their emotions and feelings without judgment. You just let them talk. You don't have to judge them. And stay positive. I know that sometimes our minds tend to go towards the negative. It's sometimes easier almost for us to go to negative areas, but keep a positive and understanding outlook on things. Letting yourself focus on negatives often leads to that overreaction, right? That emotional control that sometimes is a struggle. So make certain that you are always keeping a positive, open mind, and that will allow you to be a better listener. So these are some steps, just 4 steps that you can start thinking about when it comes to listening. So first, you're going to ask those 2 questions, right? You're going to put those into your vocabulary. And then you're going to take these steps. So tell me more, what happened next, and then you're going to truly listen. Now, sometimes we walk away from these workshops and we think, now what did she say? What was I supposed to work on? So I came up with a mnemonic to help you remember what we talked about, and it's FACE. So these are the steps to being a better listener. Focus. Acknowledge what that person's saying, consider the social cues that are coming up, and empathize. So now you can put into practice these steps towards being a better listener. And it's important that we're not only doing this as adults, but that we are also modeling this for our children, because it's very important that our children develop healthy, strong relationships early on. And if you are modeling these behaviors, if you're modeling good listening skills, they're going to pick up on that and they're going to learn from that. And we know that not only is it important for us to have strong relationships in our older years, but it's very important, it's critically important as we are young children to have those strong relationships. We find that the most susceptible to loneliness are the very young and the very old. So we don't want to miss out on helping them build those relationships. And it may be very apparent to you why developing positive relationships as children is important, but let's look at a few of those. Friendships are, of course, an essential part of developing social and emotional development. Also, just as they do when we are older, when we are children, friendships also reduce stress and help you navigate challenging experiences, especially when they come up against those teenage years. And they may not be reaching out to adults as much, they're looking towards their peers. Friendships also help develop confidence and self-esteem. Friends allow your child time to learn how to communicate and how to deal with conflict effectively. Within friendships, there's an opportunity to develop leadership skills. And studies have shown that the children who enjoy close friendships are more likely to experience higher levels of happiness, life satisfaction, and self-esteem, and less likely to be lonely, depressed, or victimized. So just as we looked at the purpose of listening, it's important that we understand the purpose of developing strong relationships in childhood. So we know that happiness, in order to be happy, we need to have those strong relationships. And in order to have those strong relationships, we have to develop the art of listening. So when you're doing this with your child, try to do it in fun ways. There are fun games that you can start incorporating with children. We talked about modeling the behavior, which is very important, but then also play some games that will help teach the art of listening, the skill of listening. Many of you know these games already, but never really thought that, oh, what you're teaching how to listen. Telephone, we've all played telephone as children. Used to be talked about as how rumors spread, right? But if you play telephone, you can sit in a circle and you whisper to the person next to you something, a line, a sentence. And then they whisper that to the next person and the next person and the next person. So they have to really listen. And you can see how many people really listen well, or does the story really change as it gets to the last person in the line. Freeze dance is a great way to not only get out energy and work on impulse control, but also listening. So you have music on, you select a certain music, you have that song playing, and whenever you turn that song off, they have to freeze. And you can play with the volume and you can hide the controls so they're not watching your hands to see when you're going to turn the music off. And that really will help develop that movement, impulse control, and listening skills. Of course, Simon Says. We all know how to play Simon Says, and when you are playing Simon Says, you're enhancing their ability to focus. End of the word, beginning of the next. This is for your older children, and this is a really good one because they have to really listen to the word that was said. So if I say, for example, horse, you have to hear that word, and horse ends with the letter E. So your word has to start with the letter E, and you say ear. And then the next person hears ear, and they have to come up with a word that starts with the last letter, which is R. So you really have to listen and process the information in order to keep up with this game. Tell a group story. This is a great way to get everyone involved. You can do this as a family. So of course, I will start the story and I'll give a line, and you have to listen to what I said, because if I said, once upon a time, there was a frog and a rabbit and they were best friends, then you have to hear what I said and give the next line in the story. And then the next person gives the next line in the story, and we continue on, and everyone has to follow the story line by line in order to have a cohesive story, in order to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So that is a great way to develop that listening skill. And creativity. Act out your own TV news program. So if you have an older child, maybe your child is going to be the TV interviewer and you are going to be the interviewee. Perhaps you just saved a kitten from a tree and your child is going to interview you about that experience, how you feel about it, how you actually saved the day. And you can even record this. Do it in Zoom like we are now, and set up your recording studio and interview each other, and then watch it back and critique. Were you listening to my answer? Did your next question make sense based on what I said to you? And then at the end of the interview, the reporter, your child, should be able to summarize the event of the day in order to end the story. So that is a great way to work on communication skills and to develop that listening. Now, I know with the state of the world right now, we have all of the social distancing still. So it's difficult to have lots of friends over in order to play these types of games. But many of these games can be done virtually, right? You can set up that Zoom conferencing call and have everyone's cameras on, and you can easily play Simon Says. You can definitely do the end of the word and the beginning of the word. You can tell a group story. You can record the group story, which would be really fun because then everyone would have a copy of that group story. And you could certainly act out TV interviews from a distance. So these can all be done at a distance. Developing connections with friends while at a distance, and practicing listening skills. So think of some creative way that you can start incorporating this. There are lots of different ways that you can start developing social skills with your child, but focus right now on developing those listening skills. Make certain that you discuss the person's feelings, right? You could even do this certainly when you are in an experience where they're interacting with someone afterwards. You could talk about that person's feelings and your child's feelings. You could look at pictures in a book or pictures in a magazine or online and ask them, how do you think that person's feeling? Why do you think that person is feeling happy or sad or angry? What makes you say that? Well, what do you think happened before that picture was taken in order for that person to feel that way? And if you saw that person right now, what would you say to him to make him happier, or to really find out what had gone wrong because you think there's some type of concern there? So discuss people's feelings. Let them practice that. Role play certain social situations, so you can pretend that you are going to the zoo together and just role play how you should act, how you should behave, how you should interact with other people around you. And always provide positive feedback. We know that our children, especially our children with ADHD, really learn better when they are caught being good, right? When we discuss the positive things. They learn best by discussing the positive things. So if they open the door for you and you walk in, then acknowledge it. That was really kind of you, how you opened the door. Or I really liked how when Billy fell, you went over and you asked him if he was doing okay. So make certain that you provide him with positive feedback. And then Finally, you always want to reflect on progress. This is self-monitoring. It's helping to develop self-monitoring. And self-monitoring is part of executive function, okay? Executive function is that ability to self-monitor and really know what you're doing well. So it's important to reflect on that, because when you reflect on your own progress, then it helps you to start assimilate that knowledge and start applying those skills on a daily basis. So you should always reflect and self-monitor when you're practicing your listening skills, but make certain too that you encourage your child to reflect on progress. What did I do well? What did you do well? What could be improved, right? What were some of the social cues I actually picked up on? And so you can ask yourself these questions, but also model this for your child and make certain that your child reflects on these areas, because reflection really does help you start incorporating these skills on a daily basis. So I'm going to finalize the art of listening and developing those strong relationships, because again, our goal is happiness, and happiness comes from strong relationships, and strong relationships are developed by listening and understanding. So I'm going to leave you with a quote from our philosopher, Winnie the Pooh. A friend is someone who helps you up when you're down, and if they can't, they lay down beside you and listen. So your challenge today is to think about a relationship you have. Think about one person in your life. It could be a friend, it could be a new friend, it could be an old friend, it could be your spouse, your partner, it could be a relative. Think about that person and think about how you can start taking some steps to improve your relationship, to strengthen that bond. Practice asking those questions. Tell me more. What happened next? And then practice really listening. When you do that, take some time afterwards, at the end of the day, at the end of the conversation, and reflect on your progress. Okay? That's your challenge. It can be a new friend, an old friend, but start taking some steps to strengthening those relationships. Find your happiness and develop better heart health, better physical health, and better mind health. Now, I know that many of you are thinking, well, I understand that these are the steps that I should take, that I should be more focused, that I should, filter out some distractions, that I should control my impulsivity. I do understand that, but those are hard skills for me. And play attention can help with that. I know that many of you here now are current play attention clients. But if you are looking for a program, a customized program that can help you develop these skills we've been talking about, help you develop the ability to stay focused and to filter distractions and to process information, that's what Play Attention specializes in. We use NASA-inspired neurotechnology, and we integrate feedback-based technology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping to strengthen all of those cognitive skills that are necessary for strong executive function. And not just strong executive function, as we talked about, we're also working on those skills that will help improve our relationships and increase our happiness. And when we talk about it, oftentimes we talk about attention and the importance of being focused and paying attention, but that really is just the tip of the iceberg, right? There were a lot of other skills we discussed today that are critical to this process. And that's being mindful, being in the present moment. Remember when we talked about turning your phone off, flipping it over, and really being in that present moment. So mindfulness is an area. Filtering distractions. We know that this can be difficult. I talk to a lot of our adult clients and they'll say, it's like there are a million different TV sets going on in my head all at the same time. So being able to stay focused on what's important and filter out all of that unnecessary stimuli, that's an important skill. Auditory processing, being able to take in the information that's being said and process that information. We have to improve our working memory so that we can comprehend the conversation and control our impulsivity in order not to interrupt or not to respond before we actually process the verbal cues and the social cues. And all of these skills are worked on, plus many more. But these are some of the skills that we work on in every single session in Play Attention. So Play Attention is a complete and comprehensive program to start developing those core cognitive skills that will lay the foundation for strong executive function and improved happiness. If you also want to learn a little bit more about Play Attention, we have a couple of upcoming events and some information that you may want to have. And if you do, there's going to be a number next to each one of these. If you would just type in the number in the chat box so I make certain that we follow up with you and make certain that you get the information you need. So first of all, if you need more information about Play Attention, a couple of different ways we can do this. One is that next Thursday, we have a webinar specifically about Play Attention. And we're going to be talking about how Play Attention integrates the latest research in neuroplasticity and uses the NASA-inspired body wave technology to improve executive function and self-regulation. So we're really going to go much more in depth about the background, the research and development, and how to actually incorporate Play Attention into your daily life. And so if you would like to attend that webinar, just type a number 1 in the chat box and we'll make certain that you are registered for that event. It is next Thursday at the same time, 1 o'clock. All right, Kristen, absolutely. I will make certain you and Abby are registered. Also, we have the opportunity, if you don't want to do a big webinar again, you would prefer a one-on-one conversation so that we talk about your specific strengths and needs, then we can do a one-on-one consultation. Those usually are about 40 minutes, and what we like to do is just learn a little bit more about you or your child or your clients. We'll talk about what you're really good at and the areas you want to improve. And then we can customize a plan for you that you can review to make certain that Play Attention is the right tool for you. So if you would like to schedule a one-on-one consultation, be certain to type number 2 in the chat box and we'll send you our online calendar so that you can register for more one-on-one consultation. I know that many of you right now are preparing for homeschooling. And there's a lot of unknowns, so maybe you'll be homeschooling for part of the week and they'll be going to school for part of the week. So you're still navigating that whole process. So in order to support you in that process, we are going to have a series of different events that will help you in that planning process. And if you want to make certain you receive that information and those upcoming events, please type 3. One of those events that we are going to have, and we are going to have our registration available for everyone next week. And that is in the fall, we're going to have a specific course, and this will be for current Play Attention clients and those individuals still looking at starting their Play Attention program. But you're all invited to register for our Executive Function 101 course. And that course, we're going to provide you with activities, new activities each week that you can incorporate into your homeschool day, or if you're an adult, incorporate it into your week. We're going to have specific activities that will work on executive function. So we're going to have certain categories like memory and time management, organization, and we'll have activities that you can modify for each age level, whether you're 5 years old or 55 years old. So again, that registration will be available next week with more information on that. We're really excited. And if you have a Play Attention program in place in your professional practice or at home, and you want to supplement your program with these activities, they're certainly going to complement the work you're doing within Play Attention. Because in your Play Attention program, you're working on all those skills, and then we're going to give you practical activities where you can start to apply those skills you're learning within play attention. So if you want us to reach out to you when that fall course registration is available, just type in 4 and we will certainly send that out to you. Joyce, no, was it Joyce? No, it was Steph. 1 second. Steph and Susan, you both asked, is there going to be a charge for it? And there is going to be a registration fee per family, and that registration fee is going to be $99 per family. It's a 5-week course with different activities every day, released every day. Well, it's going to be released on Saturdays, but you'll have 5 different activities to choose from for the week. And then not only those activities will be given to you, there'll be different activities and parent workshops for professionals that will be available at a low cost. So it is a $99 registration fee. And if you put in number 4, and that's, yes, it is $99 for the family. So whether you have 2 family members or 10 family members, it's going to be the same for you. And also, if you typed in 4, I'll make certain that you all get a coupon code, so you'll get a bit of a discount on that as well. And then we're also going to have a special webinar to discuss distance training for our professionals. I know that many of our professionals here, you want to offer play attention and your services using play attention with individuals as a professional. But you may not be ready to have a full group of students in your office. You might be seeing just a few students or clients throughout the day right now in your office. And then we have iLab available that will give you the opportunity to do distance training. And we have a new exciting platform that I think you will be really excited by and will make it very accessible for you. So if you are wanting to do that, then just type in 5 and we'll make certain that you receive the information on that program and also a webinar we'll be doing upcoming. Steph, you said foster families, and if you could clarify your question, I'd be happy to address your question. Do you mean, is the price $99 available for foster families? Absolutely, but I'm not certain I'm clear on that, so make certain that you do clarify that for me. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone. I think we've gotten everyone's requests for additional information. We'll make certain we get that out to you. We'll make also certain that you get this email follow-up with the recording. If you are watching this on Facebook Live, of course, I can't see your chat right now in Zoom, so make certain that you type down any questions or requests that you might have on Facebook Live right now, and we will follow up with you. Thanks so much, everyone. It has been a pleasure. Make certain right now you reflect on one person. Let's just start small. One person that you want to start strengthening your connection with, and take those steps in order to improve your relationships and find happiness. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.